Have you ever looked at a photo of yourself from a few years ago and felt a strangeness that wasn't nostalgia, not longing for who you were? Strangeness. Like looking at a stranger who has your face, a stranger who wore your clothes, slept in your bed, made your decisions, but who, for some reason you can't fully explain, is simply not you anymore. If you're a Scorpio, you've probably felt this more than once, and you've probably tried to understand what it means, what caused it, whether it's something good or bad. But the question no one asks, the one that really matters, is another. Not what caused it. Why? Why doesn't Scorpio simply change? Why doesn't it just mature, adjust, evolve like everyone else seems to do? Why, when Scorpio transforms, does the old version need to be so completely destroyed that you don't even recognize it anymore? By the end of this video, you'll understand the answer. And it's not about astrology, it's about you. About the most precise and most unsettling mechanism that operates within Scorpio, the one that works without asking permission, that transforms without warning, that destroys what needs to be destroyed so that something more real can appear in its place. You'll be unrecognizable, or maybe you already are. And there's a reason for that, a reason so specific to Scorpio that it will make sense in a way that few things have before. Because Scorpio doesn't abandon what it still feels. Scorpio abandons what it no longer feels. And when the intensity fades, when that fire that kept something alive simply goes out, the Scorpio knows deep down, before consciously admitting it, that that version of itself has already begun to die. And then the silence begins. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say, the silence of someone who is descending. Scorpio disappears from conversations, from social media, sometimes from their own emotions, not to escape, but out of a need for depth, like a diver who needs to leave the surface to reach where things really are. Down there, where no one sees and no one interrupts, something is being evaluated. Versions, bonds, beliefs, entire patterns that sustained a way of existing. Scorpio descends to the root of themselves and begins to ask, is this still true? Is this still me? Does this still deserve the weight I'm giving it? And the answers that come from deep inside don't ask permission. They don't arrive gently. They arrive with the unsettling clarity of things that were already true before you were able to look at them. But what if the answer that comes deep down is no? When you descend to the root of yourself and discover that what was sustaining everything, that belief, that relationship, that version, no longer has any roots, that what seemed solid was just habit. What remains? Who are you when the version that others knew no longer exists, and the next one doesn't even have a name yet? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. It's not about predictions. It's about what's already happening within you, something you don't yet have a complete vocabulary for. For Scorpio, it speaks of this process of descent and reconstruction as a capacity, not a curse. The rarest ability that exists, to consciously destroy oneself in order to intentionally rebuild oneself. Most people run from this process. Scorpio doesn't run from it, but sometimes gets lost in the middle of it, unsure if they are moving forward or just suffering for no reason. You're in that middle right now, still processing, still feeling the weight of that question. That discomfort is still active, and it's precisely here, while it's still alive within you, that it's worth going deeper. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Tell me in the comments, can you pinpoint the exact moment you realized a version of yourself had begun to die? Not when it ended, when it began. That recognition says a lot about where you are now. What Scorpio cuts, it cuts deep. Not because it's cruel, because it's necessary. There's a huge difference between abandoning something because you're angry and abandoning something because it's no longer real. anger passes, but the perception that something has lost its reality, that doesn't return. And Scorpio knows how to distinguish one from the other better than any other sign. When he cuts a tie, when he steps away from a situation, when he stops investing in something that previously consumed all his energy, it's not impulsiveness, it's pruning. The same pruning that a gardener does to branches that are still green, still seem alive, but are draining the sap that the main trunk needs. There is no cruelty in the scissors, there is precision. And the gardener who never prunes doesn't have a gentler tree. He has a weaker tree. Scorpio carries a paradox within all of this that is difficult to explain to an outsider. While it can cut with surgical precision, it feels everything it is cutting in a way that most people could never come close to. It's not coldness. It's the most contradictory combination that exists, feeling deeply and yet letting go. Because there comes a point when continuing to hold on to something that is no longer real begins to cost Scorpio more than the bond that was being maintained. And then comes something that few people talk about, and which is perhaps the most human, most vulnerable, most hidden aspect of this entire transformation: grief. Not grief for the people who are gone, not for what was lost out there. Scorpio's grief is stranger, harder to name. It's grief for who he himself was. Because when you stop being a version of yourself, you don't just lose the habits, you lose the memories that made sense in that version. You lose the specific way you laughed, how you loved, how you saw the world through that particular filter that has now disappeared. And there's no way to explain that to anyone without sounding dramatic. How do you say you're mourning yourself without people thinking you're exaggerating? So Scorpio doesn't say, it carries. There remains this silent weight of carrying the longing for who you were, not because you wanted to go back, but because that version truly existed, truly felt, truly mattered. And it deserves to be acknowledged before it is buried. It's like taking off a garment you've loved for years. A garment that was yours during important moments, a garment with memories woven into its very fabric, but that today simply doesn't fit anymore. Not because the garment is ruined, because you've changed size, and keeping the garment doesn't make you smaller, but wearing it again when it no longer fits, that does diminish something about you. Scorpios learn this, usually the hard way, but they learn. And when the pain of this process passes, it doesn't disappear, it just passes. Who appears on the other side? This question lingers after each major Scorpio transformation, and it's exactly the kind of question that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose answers, starting from what is specific to Scorpio. This ability to delve into the depths of pain and return with something that others don't even know exists. The book discusses how to transform the weight of this process into a purpose that only makes sense after you've gone through it. How the pain carried in silence wasn't wasted, it was raw material. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a specific moment within Scorpio's transformation that no one properly documents. It's the moment when he realizes that the process wasn't chaotic, that the silence wasn't an escape, that the cuts weren't impulsiveness, that everything that seemed to crumble for no reason actually had such a precise internal logic that it gives you chills when you look back. Scorpio operates with a compass that isn't in consciousness, it's deeper, further down, below rationalization, below fear, below the desire to please or be understood. There, where only raw truth can breathe. And this compass, this internal system that functions independently of what the mind thinks or what the heart desires, was constantly recalculating. Even when it seemed like everything was at a standstill, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. Imagine a GPS that freezes. You're driving, it stops talking, the screen freezes for a second, and you think, it's broken, it lost signal, I'm going to get lost. But what the GPS was doing wasn't freezing, It was recalculating, processing a new route, deeper, more precise than the one you were following. The silence wasn't a malfunction, it was processing. That's exactly what happens during periods of apparent paralysis for Scorpio. When it disappears, when it stops responding with the same intensity, when it seems like something has frozen. It hasn't frozen, it's recalculating, and when the new path appears, it will be so clear, so inevitable, that it will seem like it was always obvious, that any other path would be a distortion. But there's one detail that GPS doesn't have to deal with, but Scorpio does. Pain. GPS recalculates without feeling. Scorpio recalculates by feeling everything. Why does Scorpio's transformation hurt so much? Why can't it be gentler, more gradual, kinder to those going through it? There is an answer to that, and it's uncomfortable to hear, but honest. The pain is not a flaw in the process. The pain is confirmation that something real is being transformed. Think about it carefully. False things don't hurt when you let them go. Relationships that were never real, versions of yourself that were never authentic, beliefs you never truly believed in. Letting go of that doesn't hurt. It brings relief. A relief sometimes mixed with shame, but relief nonetheless. The pain appears when what is being transformed was real, when the bond was genuine, when the version that is dying truly existed, truly felt, truly mattered. So when it hurts, Scorpio, when it really hurts, it's a sign that the transformation is legitimate, that it's not emotional theater, that something real is being reconfigured on a level you don't fully control with your mind. And that's why it has weight, it has value, it has the kind of density that only real things carry. It's like a bone that breaks in the wrong place and needs to be refactored to heal correctly. The doctor doesn't break it because they want to hurt you. They break it because true healing requires the process to be done the right way, not the least painful way. Because a poorly healed bone limits you forever, and Scorpio deep down knows that carrying an old limitation costs more than facing new pain. On the other side of that fracture, when the bone heals in the right place, something appears that Scorpio rarely allows itself to name, a version that is harder to shake. Not because it has become harder, because it has become more whole. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose talks about what Scorpio builds after major transformations. What is rebuilt after conscious destruction is not an improved version of the previous one. It's a version that didn't need the previous one to exist. More free, more aligned with who you truly are when you stop trying to be anything else. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There comes a time after all this when the Scorpio looks at themselves, not literally in the mirror, but at how they react, how they feel, what they can endure and what they can no longer endure. And they don't recognize the old patterns, not because they've forgotten, because they've stopped making sense at the most basic level. As if the operating system has changed and the old programs simply don't run anymore. It's a quiet strangeness. It's not pride. It's not immediate relief. It's almost like reading a diary from years ago and not recognizing the emotional handwriting of the person who wrote it. The words make sense. The situation makes sense. But the way that person felt, reacted, needed certain things, it seems to belong to someone you knew well but who is no longer here. And that someone was you, and at the same time, it wasn't. And then comes an inevitable question. Do the people around recognize this new Scorpio? Or do they continue to relate to the version they knew? The one that reacted in a specific way, that had certain triggers, that needed certain validations, as if nothing had changed, as if they could ignore what happened and pick up where they left off. The honest answer is that not everyone can keep up, and it's nobody's fault. There are people who have formed a bond with a version of you that no longer exists. They depend in some way on you remaining who you were, because that's what makes the bond meaningful to them. And when you truly change, when you become truly unrecognizable, these people get lost. Not because they're bad people, because they were connected to a frequency that you no longer transmit. Scorpios often feel guilty about this, as if becoming unrecognizable were a betrayal of the people who stayed, of those who left, sometimes of themselves, as if changing so much were a form of instability, of a lack of commitment to who you were. But it's not. Becoming unrecognizable isn't betrayal. It's the honest price of a real transformation. And the people who stay, those who remain after you've become something else, those were connected to something deeper than the image. They were connected to the essence. And the essence of Scorpio doesn't change between transformations. What changes is everything that was covering it, distorting it, limiting it. What remains after each cycle isn't less, it's purer. This recognition of who stayed and why they stayed is one of the most silent gifts that transformation brings to Scorpio. And understanding what sustains real bonds, what separates essential connection from habitual connection, is something that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose addresses from an angle that goes straight to what Scorpio already feels, but rarely manages to articulate. That you weren't made for everyone. That your depth isn't a flaw that needs to be softened to be accepted. It's a filter, and it works. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. So we return to the title, to the reason. You will become unrecognizable for a reason, not by accident, not by trauma, not by emotional instability or lack of consistency, but because there was something inside you, a truer, wholer, deeper version of yourself than anything that existed before, that needed space to emerge, and that space doesn't appear on its own. It is created, sometimes with pain, sometimes with silence that others misinterpret, sometimes with losses that take years to fully make sense. But it's created with a precision that, when you look back honestly, seems almost sacred, as if everything that crumbled was exactly what needed to crumble so that this version, this one, the one listening to this now, could have a place to exist. As if the universe weren't cruel to you, just precise, and precision sometimes feels like cruelty from within the process. There's a fact about butterflies that nobody really uses as a metaphor. Inside the cocoon, there isn't a caterpillar resting. There's a caterpillar being dissolved completely. The cells break down. The entire structure becomes a kind of biological soup. There isn't a single piece of the caterpillar that survives intact to become the butterfly. The butterfly is built from scratch, using the materials the caterpillar left behind. What it wasn't lost. It was transformed into something else. Into something the caterpillar could never have become without undergoing complete dissolution. Scorpio understands this at a cellular level because that's exactly how it works inside. And the beauty of it, the disturbing and rare beauty of it, is that the butterfly doesn't miss being a caterpillar. It simply is what it is now, with the wings it has, with the lightness it has gained, with the world seen from an angle that the previous version could never imagine, because the previous version didn't have what it needs to fly. You've been dissolved before, and you've arrived on the other side, and you'll be dissolved again at some point, in a way that only you know how to recognize when it arrives, and you'll arrive on the other side again, not because you're weak, because you're a Scorpio. Because that's your way of existing, deep, real, unrecognizable to those who can't keep up, and absolutely whole to those who truly see you. And the reason the title promises, it's not external, it didn't come from outside. It was inside all along, waiting for you to destroy enough to finally find it.